Kirk Franklin is a name that almost everyone who listens to gospel music recognizes. Even people who do not regularly listen to gospel have likely heard at least one of his songs. His music has crossed church walls and reached mainstream audiences in a way that very few gospel artists ever managed to do. At the age of 54, Kirk Franklin finally admitted something deeply personal that many people suspected but never expected him to openly confirm. This admission was not about music, awards, or fame. It was about a private struggle that affected his marriage, his faith, and his inner life for many years. To understand why this confession mattered so much, it is important to understand who Kirk Franklin is, where he came from, and how his life experiences shaped both his success and his struggles. His story is not just about becoming a famous musician. It is about pain, survival, faith, temptation, honesty, and redemption. Long before he became a global gospel icon, Kirk Franklin lived a life filled with hardship. He was born on January 26, 1970, in Fort Worth, Texas. His birth name was Kirk Dwayne Smith. When he was only 4 years old, his mother abandoned him. This single event changed the course of his entire life. Being left at such a young age left a deep emotional wound that followed him into adulthood. With nowhere else to go, Kirk was taken in by his aunt, Gertrude Franklin. She was a person who raised him, protected him, and tried her best to guide him in the right direction. Although she provided him with love and care, life under her roof was not easy. They struggled financially, and the neighborhood they lived in was rough and dangerous. Crime, gangs, and drugs were common around him, and avoiding trouble required constant effort. Despite these challenges, Kirk showed signs of exceptional musical talent very early in life. His aunt noticed this gift and did everything she could to help him develop it. When Kirk was just 4 years old, he began taking piano lessons. Music quickly became his safe place, a way to escape the chaos around him. Church also played a major role in his early life. He joined the church choir as a child, and people were amazed by his natural ability to sing and understand music. By the time he was 11 years old, Kirk was already directing the adult church choir. This was highly unusual for someone so young, but it showed just how gifted he was. Music gave him purpose and direction, but it did not erase the pain he carried inside. Growing up in poverty left emotional scars that success could not easily heal. Kirk often felt torn between the values he learned in church and the harsh reality of life outside it. As a teenager, he struggled with rebellion and confusion. He questioned faith, authority, and even his own future. One of the most traumatic moments of his youth came when he witnessed the shooting death of a close friend at the age of 15. This experience shocked him deeply and forced him to confront how fragile life really was. It became a turning point that pushed him back toward music and the church, not just as interests, but as lifelines. As Kirk grew older, he became more serious about his musical calling. He joined a local gospel group called the Humble Hearts, where he began writing and recording original songs. His creativity, combined with his raw emotional honesty, set him apart from others. Soon, his work caught the attention of gospel music leaders, opening doors that would eventually lead him to national fame. However, behind the scenes, the emotional wounds from his childhood remained unresolved. The abandonment he experienced as a child, the pressure of success, and the expectations placed on him as a gospel leader quietly followed him into adulthood. These hidden struggles would later play a major role in the confession he would finally make at the age of 54, a confession that shocked fans but also helped many people feel less alone in their own battles. As Kirk Franklin moved deeper into his teenage years, music became more than just a talent or a hobby for him. It became a way to survive emotionally and mentally. While many young people around him were pulled into gangs, drugs, and violence, Kirk tried to stay focused on his music and his faith. This was not easy. The environment around him constantly tested his values. His Aunt Gertrude worked multiple jobs to support him, and although she did everything she could, there were moments when Kirk felt alone and misunderstood. He struggled with anger and rebellion, especially when it came to religion. At times, he felt that faith was being forced on him rather than chosen by him. This internal conflict caused him to drift away from church for a period. Even though music continued to be a central part of his life, the turning point came when Kirk decided to fully commit to music as his purpose. He realized that if he did not take control of his life, The streets would decide his future for him. He became more involved in his local church again, not just as a member, but as a musician and leader. His ability to blend emotion with sound made his music feel real and relatable. People did not just hear his songs, they felt them. This emotional honesty caught the attention of Milton Bigham, a major figure in gospel music who was connected to the Georgia Mass Choir. Bigham saw something special in Kirk and gave him opportunities that many young artists only dream about. Under Bigham's guidance, Kirk began conducting choirs and recording music at a professional level in the early 1990s. Kirk's career started to gain real momentum. At just 20 years old, he performed at the Gospel Music Workshop of America Convention, one of the most important events in gospel music. This performance placed him on the radar of the industry and confirmed that he was not just talented, but ready for something bigger. In 1992, Kirk made a bold move by forming his own choir group called The Family. This group would later become known as Kirk Franklin and The Family. Around the same time, he signed with Gospel-Centric Records, a label that believed in his vision and was willing to take creative risks with him. This decision would change the direction of gospel music forever in 1993. Kirk Franklin and The Family released their debut album. The album was a massive success, far beyond what anyone expected. It stayed on the Billboard Top Gospel Albums chart for over 40 weeks and eventually reached platinum status. Songs like Why We Sing and Silver and Gold became instant classics. What made this album special was not just its success, but its sound. Kirk introduced hip-hop and R&B elements into traditional gospel music, something that had rarely been done before at such a high level. Younger audiences were drawn to this fresh style, while some older gospel fans were unsure how to feel about it. Despite the criticism, the album proved that gospel music could evolve without losing its spiritual message. As Kirk's fame grew, so did the pressure on him. He was no longer just a musician. He was seen as a leader, a role model, and a voice of faith for millions of people. This expectation weighed heavily on him. On the outside, he appeared confident and successful. On the inside, he was still dealing with unresolved pain from his childhood and the emotional impact of sudden fame. The music industry is demanding, and being constantly in the public, I left little room for personal struggles. Kirk continued to push forward, releasing more albums and expanding his influence, but the emotional cost of this lifestyle slowly began. During this time, Kirk also began to think about creating a stable personal life. He wanted a family, something he never truly had growing up. This desire led him toward marriage, hoping that love and stability could fill the emotional gaps left from his past. While his career continued to rise, his personal life became more complex. The combination of success, pressure, and unhealed emotional wounds quietly set the stage for struggles that would surface years later. These struggles would eventually lead to a public confession that shocked many people, but also revealed the very human side of man often placed on a spiritual pedestal. By the mid-1990s, Kirk Franklin was no longer just a rising star. He was becoming one of the most influential figures in gospel music. His success with his first album gave him the confidence to keep pushing creative boundaries, even when critics questioned his choices. In 1996, he released the album Whatcha Lookin' For, which marked a major turning point in his career. This project further blended gospel messages with contemporary R&B and hip-hop sounds. Songs from the album connected deeply with younger listeners who felt that traditional gospel did not always speak their language. The album's success proved that Kirk had discovered a powerful formula: music that was spiritually meaningful but also modern and emotionally honest. The album was nominated for a Grammy, which helped cement a position as a serious artist in both gospel and mainstream music circles. As Kirk's popularity increased, so did the expectations placed upon him. He was seen as a symbol of innovation and faith, someone who had successfully brought gospel music into a new era. However, not everyone welcomed this change. Many traditional gospel fans believed that mixing sacred messages with modern musical styles was disrespectful. Some accused Kirk of turning gospel music into entertainment rather than worship. These criticisms were often loud in public, and they deeply affected him. Despite this, Kirk remained committed to his vision. He believed that reaching people where they were mattered more than pleasing critics. This belief became a defining feature of his career and his personal philosophy in 1998. Kirk released a New Nation project, an album that further expanded his creative reach. This project included powerful songs like Lean on Me and Revolution, which addressed themes of unity, social responsibility, and faith in difficult times. Lean on Me was especially notable because it featured a wide range of artists from different musical backgrounds, including Mary J. Blige, R. Kelly, and Bono. This collaboration was groundbreaking for gospel music and showed Kirk's desire to bring people together through music. The song's message of support and togetherness resonated with audiences across different cultures and beliefs. Once again, Kirk faced criticism for working with secular artists, but the success of the song proved that his approach was effective. While his professional life was thriving, Kirk's personal life was entering a new chapter. In January 1996, he married Tammy Collins. Tammy was supportive, strong, and deeply committed to their relationship. Together, they hoped to build a stable family life, something Kirk had longed for since childhood. However, marriage brought its own challenges, especially under the constant spotlight of fame. Being a public figure made privacy difficult, and small personal issues often felt much larger because of public attention. Kirk and Tammy worked hard to protect their family life, but the pressures of fame and ministry made this an ongoing struggle as the years went on. Kirk continued to release successful albums, including the rebirth of Kirk Franklin in 2002. This album featured the hit song Hosanna and showed a more mature and reflective side of his music. While his sound continued to evolve, the core message of faith and hope remained the same. Yet, behind the scenes, Kirk was dealing with personal battles that few people knew about. The emotional pain for his early years, combined with the pressure of being a spiritual leader, created internal conflicts that he struggled to confront openly. During this period, Kirk also became more aware of the weight of his influence. People looked to him not just for music, but for guidance and inspiration. This responsibility made it even harder for him to admit weakness or seek help. Like many people in leadership positions, he felt the need to appear strong at all times. This mindset would later contribute to the secrecy surrounding his personal struggles. Although his career continued to reach new heights, the emotional cost of maintaining this image was growing. By the early 2000s, Kirk Franklin had achieved nearly everything an artist could dream of. Awards, recognition, and global influence were all part of his life. However, success did not erase his inner struggles. Instead, it sometimes amplified them. The contrast between his public image and private reality became more pronounced. This growing tension would eventually lead to a moment of honesty that would surprise many people. The confession that came years later was not sudden, but the result of a long and difficult internal journey that began during these years of fame, creativity, and personal pressure as Kirk Franklin entered the new millennium. His career continued to grow, but so did the emotional weight he carried. By this point, he had already proven that he was not a one-hit wonder. His influence on gospel music was undeniable, and his willingness to challenge traditional boundaries had permanently changed the genre. In 2005, Kirk released the album Hero, which included powerful songs like Looking for You and Imagine Me. These songs focus heavily on themes of forgiveness, self-worth, and redemption. Many listeners felt that this album spoke directly to their personal struggles. What they did not realize was that Kirk himself was living the emotions he was writing about. The music reflected a man searching for peace. Even while standing at the height of success, the album Hero was critically acclaimed and earned Kirk another Grammy Award. Once again, the public saw only the celebration, not the personal cost behind it. With every new achievement, the expectations placed on Kirk increased. He was no longer viewed simply as an artist, but as a moral example, especially within the gospel community. This made it extremely difficult for him to admit when he was struggling. Like many people in leadership positions, he felt pressure to appear spiritually strong at all times. Admitting weakness felt risky, as though it could damage not only his reputation, but also his ability to inspire others. Around this time, Kirk and Tammy were raising their children and trying to maintain a sense of normal family life. They had 4 children together, including Tammy's daughter from a previous relationship, whom Kirk embraced as his own. Family meant everything to him, largely because he never experienced a traditional family growing up. However, balancing family life with a demanding career was not easy. Touring, recording, and public appearances often took him away from home, while Tammy remained supportive. The distance and pressure created moments of strain in their marriage. These challenges were not unusual for celebrity couples, but they were intensified by Kirk's role as a faith leader in 2011. Kirk released Hello Fear, an album that openly addressed issues like anxiety, insecurity, and fear. This project marked another important shift in his storytelling. For the first time, he openly acknowledged emotional struggles that many people deal with but rarely talk about. The album was praised for its honesty and vulnerability. Songs like I Smile encouraged listeners to remain hopeful even during difficult times. Once again, Kirk's music resonated deeply with audiences, especially those who felt unseen or unheard. However, even as he spoke about fear and emotional pain through his music, there were still parts of his life he kept hidden. During these years, Kirk also became more active as a mentor and public figure outside of music. His role as a judge on the BET Gospel Competition show Sunday best introduced him to a new generation of viewers. He was seen as a guide and teacher, helping young artists find their voices. This role further strengthened his image as a leader and role model. While he genuinely cared about helping others succeed, the responsibility added to the pressure he already felt. The more people looked up to him, the harder it became to admit personal struggles. Despite his outward confidence, Kirk was dealing with internal conflict that followed him for many years. This struggle was not visible to fans or even to many people close to him. It was rooted in unresolved emotional pain and unhealthy coping habits developed over time. Like many individuals who experience childhood trauma, Kirk had learned to hide certain emotions rather than confront them. Over the years, this avoidance allowed the problem to grow quietly. The contrast between his public success and private struggle became increasingly difficult to manage as time passed. Kirk realized that ignoring his internal battles was no longer an option. The emotional distance it created within his marriage and personal life became harder to ignore. Tammy's strength and patience played a crucial role during this period. She encouraged honesty and healing, even when the process was uncomfortable. Slowly, Kirk began to understand that true strength did not come from pretending to be perfect, but from facing painful truths. This realization would eventually lead him to make one of the most courageous decisions of his life: to openly admit a struggle that many people face, but few are willing to talk about. That admission would not only impact his family, but also change the way many people viewed faith, leadership, and personal healing. As Kirk Franklin grew older, he began to understand that success and faith alone were not enough to heal deep emotional wounds. Years of pressure, public expectations, and unresolved pain had slowly created cracks in his personal life. While fans saw a confident artist and spiritual leader, Kirk privately struggled with habits that brought him shame and guilt. One of the hardest realities he had to face was how these struggles were affecting his marriage. For a long time, he tried to handle everything on his own, believing that prayer and discipline would be enough. However, the longer he avoided facing the issue directly, the more damage it caused behind the scenes. This period marked a silent battle that few people knew about, but would eventually lead to the most honest confession of his life. Kirk later revealed that he'd struggled with pornography addiction since he was young. This was not a sudden issue that appeared during fame, but something that developed long before he became famous. Like many people, he used it as a way to cope with emotional pain, loneliness, and stress. Over time, what began as a private habit turned into a serious problem. The guilt surrounding it became heavier because of his position as a gospel artist and faith leader. He feared that admitting the struggle would destroy his credibility and disappoint millions of people who looked up to him. This fear kept him silent for many years. The impact of this addiction on his marriage was significant. Trust is the foundation of any strong relationship, and secrecy slowly weakened that foundation. Tammy, who had been supported throughout Kirk's career, began to feel the strain caused by emotional distance. Addiction does not only affect the person struggling with it, it affects everyone around them. Kirk realized that continuing to hide the truth was not protecting his family, but hurting them. This realization was painful but necessary. For the first time, he began to see honesty as a path to healing rather than destruction. Eventually, Kirk made the difficult decision to seek professional help. He turned to counseling and therapy, understanding that healing required more than willpower. This step was especially challenging because it forced him to confront the root causes of his behavior. Therapy helped him connect his addiction to the trauma he experienced as a child, including abandonment and exposure to violence. It allowed him to see how unresolved pain had shaped unhealthy coping mechanisms. Through this process, Kirk learned that ignoring emotional wounds does not make them disappear. It allows him to grow stronger in silence. Tammy played a crucial role during this period of healing. Instead of walking away, she chose to stand by him while also holding him accountable. Her support was not blind acceptance, but firm encouragement toward change. Together, they worked to rebuild trust and strengthen their marriage. This process was slow and required patience, honesty, and consistent effort. Kirk has openly credited Tammy for being his source of strength during one of the darkest periods of his life. Her willingness to face the truth would have made recovery possible. When Kirk finally decided to speak publicly about his addiction, it was not done for attention or sympathy. He explained that his goal was to help others who were silently struggling with the same issue. He knew that many people, especially within faith communities, feel ashamed to admit such problems. By sharing his story, he hoped to break the silence and encourage others to seek help. His confession was met with mixed reactions. Some praised his honesty and courage, while others criticized him harshly. Despite this, Kirk stood firm in his decision, believing that truth was more important than approval. This moment marked a turning point in Kirk Franklin's life and legacy. His admission showed that even people who appear strong and successful can face serious personal battles. It challenged the idea that faith leaders must be perfect to be effective. More importantly, it opened conversations about addiction, mental health, and healing within communities that often avoid these topics. Kirk's willingness to be vulnerable helped many people feel seen and understood. Rather than weakening his influence, this honesty added depth to his story and reminded the world that real strength often begins with telling the truth. After Kirk Franklin made a confession public, the reaction from fans, critics, and the gospel community was intense. For some people, his honesty was inspiring. They saw it as a brave act that showed real faith and humility. For others, it was deeply disappointing. Many had placed Kirk on a pedestal, viewing him as a perfect example of spiritual strength. His admission forced people to confront an uncomfortable truth. Faith leaders are human too. This divided response revealed how difficult it can be for public figures, especially those in religious spaces, to show vulnerability without being judged. Despite the mixed reactions, Kirk remained committed to being honest about his journey. One of the most important outcomes of his confession was the way it changed conversations around addiction and mental health. For years, topics like pornography addiction were rarely discussed openly, especially in church settings. Many people suffered in silence, feeling ashamed and isolated. By speaking openly, Kirk helped remove some of that stigma. He emphasized that addiction is not a moral failure, but a complex issue that often stems from emotional pain and unresolved trauma. His words encouraged others to seek counseling, talk to trusted people, and stop pretending everything was fine when it was not. Kirk also made it clear that healing is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. Recovery required daily effort, accountability, and ongoing support. He stressed the importance of therapy, mentorship, and honest communication. These were lessons he had learned the hard way. Instead of presenting himself as someone who had everything figured out, he positioned himself as someone still learning and growing. This approach helped rebuild trust with many fans who appreciated his transparency. At the same time, Kirk continued to focus on his family. His marriage to Tammy became stronger as a result of the honesty they shared during this difficult period. They spoke openly about the importance of communication, forgiveness, and mutual respect. Their willingness to address problems directly, rather than hiding them, helped them move forward together. Kirk has often said that without Tammy's support, his healing process would have been much harder. Their story became an example of how relationships can survive even serious challenges when both people are committed to growth. During this phase of his life, Kirk also reflected deeply on his relationship with his children. Family conflicts are not uncommon, especially in households affected by fame and pressure. At one point, a tense argument between Kirk and his eldest son, Carrington, became public. This incident reminded many people that parenting does not come with a guidebook, especially when lived under constant public attention. Kirk acknowledged his mistakes and expressed a desire to improve as a father. Rather than ignoring the issue, he used it as an opportunity to grow and learn. Professionally, Kirk did not slow down. In 2019, he released the album Long Live Love, which received widespread praise and won a Grammy Award for Best Gospel Album. Songs like Love Theory showcase his ability to stay relevant while remaining true to his message. The album proved that his creative spark was still alive and that his honesty had not damaged his career. In fact, many felt that his music had become even more meaningful because it reflected real-life struggles and hope. Kirk's later work also showed a strong commitment to mentoring young artists and addressing social issues. Through his role on Sunday Best and other projects, he continued to uplift new voices in gospel music. He used his platform to speak about love, unity, and healing, both inside and outside the church. His journey demonstrated that growth does not end with success or failure. It is a lifelong process, to be why choosing honesty over silence. Kirk Franklin reshaped the way many people viewed faith, leadership, and personal struggle. His story became a reminder that healing begins when people stop hiding and start speaking the truth. Instead of being remembered only for his music, Kirk's legacy expanded to include courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to face difficult realities. This chapter of his life showed that even in moments of weakness, there's an opportunity for transformation and hope. As Kirk Franklin moved forward after his public confession, his life took on a deeper sense of purpose. He was no longer focused only on creating hit songs or winning awards. Instead, he became more intentional about using his experiences to help others. His story now included not just success, but also struggle and recovery. This made his message more powerful and relatable. People who once felt disconnected from gospel music began to see it as something that spoke to real life, not just ideal situations. Kirk understood that his transparency had opened a door for meaningful conversations, and he chose to walk through it with honesty and humility. One of the most noticeable changes in Kirk's life was the way he talked about faith. Rather than presenting faith as something that removes all problems, he described it as a source of strength during difficult times. He spoke openly about the importance of asking for help and relying on community. This message resonated with many people who had grown tired of unrealistic expectations placed on spiritual leaders. Kirk emphasized that faith and therapy can work together, not against each other. This balanced view helped many listeners feel more comfortable seeking professional help without feeling guilty. Kirk also became more vocal about the long-term effects of childhood trauma. He explained how being abandoned at such a young age affected his sense of self-worth and emotional security. These early experiences influenced the choices he made later in life, including unhealthy coping habits. By connecting his past to his present, Kirk helped others understand how unresolved pain can follow a person into adulthood. His willingness to address these issues publicly helped normalize conversations about emotional healing and mental health. Musically, Kirk continued to evolve while staying true to his core message. His later projects reflected a more reflective and mature tone. Instead of focusing solely on external success, his songs explored themes of inner peace, forgiveness, and personal growth. Fans noticed that his music felt more honest and grounded. This evolution showed that artists do not have to remain the same to stay relevant. Growth, when embraced, can strengthen creativity rather than weaken it. Kirk's influence also extended beyond music and faith communities. He became involved in discussions about social issues, including inequality, violence, and emotional wellness. His songs often reflected these concerns, encouraging listeners to care for one another and take responsibility for positive change. By addressing real-world problems, Kirk made gospel music feel relevant to modern audiences. His work reminded people that faith is not just about personal belief, but also about action and compassion. Family remained at the center of Kirk's life during this period. He continued to work on being a better husband and father, learning from past mistakes. While no family is perfect, Kirk's willingness to admit his shortcomings helped strengthen his relationships. He often spoke about the importance of listening, patience, and forgiveness within the family. These lessons were not presented as theories, but as experiences learned through trial and error. This honesty made his message feel genuine and approachable. As the years passed, Kirk Franklin's legacy became more layered and meaningful. He was no longer seen only as a groundbreaking musician, but as a person who had faced serious challenges and chosen growth over denial. His journey showed that it is possible to rebuild trust, repair relationships, and find peace even after painful mistakes. For many people, his story became a source of hope. It demonstrated that no matter how far someone falls, there's always a path forward if they are willing to be honest and seek help. Kirk's life after his confession proved that vulnerability does not weaken a person's influence. It deepens it. By sharing his truth, he created space for others to do the same. His story continues to inspire people to face their struggles with courage and compassion. Rather than being defined by his mistakes, Kirk Franklin chose to be defined by his growth, making his journey one of resilience, faith, and lasting impact.